vicious, sadistic, cruel savages of war. They exist in all different forms of fiction and most importantly in history. In today's video, we're talking about two people that best categorize that, with SunDowner, a Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, Desperado, the Californian Wildfire, a man of the most impeccable forms of showcasing of brutatiousness, represents why not only warmongers existing in any time period is dangerous not just for the people, but as well themselves, but is one of the most entertaining to, I would argue, just like Jetstream Sam, most entertaining character of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. First is Goro, strongest of the Shokan, prince of the Outworld's arguably most physically strongest race, and one of the most revered bosses in video games and as well enforcers of Shao Kahn. One impregnable beast to say the least. Two people that you might think, like in other videos, a weird matchup, but hopefully, as I've always shown, I'll tell you why I think it is actually kinda interesting. Hope you guys will enjoy. Let's go and get it in. Californian Wildfire is an understatement. SunDowner, hailing from obviously California, went into different war efforts and war fronts, and after seeing what he saw in war, he saw that he had nothing but inner peace in the mix of conflict and bloodshed that would spill out from the great wars that would culminate from the possibility of being a warmonger. He seen nothing but power. He went out and saw some smoke level of ideology, and eventually went to different means of mercenary shit, became a cyborg, got a big ass barcode label on the front of his head. Simple shit. He believes that, simply put, war is naturally a part of who we are. Why fight it? And he believes in this to the fullest. And it's shown in this boss fight. It's cool ass music, but you guys probably will hear in the background. And as well, it's just one built different animal, one mean built different Vato. SunDowner himself is a man that obviously somewhat scales to Raiden like every other boss of a Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, and as well mixed bag as well, all members of the Winds of Destruction. He, I would say reasonably, is argued to be the second to third weakest of them, as I would say that SunDowner mixed as well with the other bosses. You could consider all being in order the strongest they could be. So I would see Kamazine as being the weakest, Mistral being the second weakest, and SunDowner being the third, and Monsoon would be over because of all his hacks and wacky versatility, and easily Jetstream Sam because of him being the only one out of all of them, possibly, if you think Senator Armstrong tested everybody the same, to do what this man Jetstream Sam did, and as well be the only real guy in all the entire group to actually be a threat to Senator Armstrong if he wanted to. With that being said, if you consider Blade Wolf in the mix of that, I believe that SunDowner reasonably should be over him, and obviously Blade Wolf should be over Metal Gear 4 post Raiden as well, reasonably scaling to Raiden to some degree. Fought Jetstream Sam, and as well, just the fact of the matter is that SunDowner is considered to be a ridiculously formidable and dangerous threat, a warmonger with no compassion. He has HF blade machetes. He's very cutthroat with them. He's very fast, vicious, ruthless, has no compassion in his eyes when he gets to killing. He raves in the bloodshed. He is one crazed animal, wicked, brutal, unforgiving when it comes down to laying devastation to the opposition. This man is the definition of what it means to be a school shooter on crack. He don't care about nothing or anybody, nothing but the devastation of whoever gets in his wake. With that being said, his other hacks and capabilities is kind of mixed from his suit or just his, augmentation. He's very fast, has considerably some form of a healing factor. You consider the mixed nano machines, nano paste in him as well. He has different blockade of different counters and shields that allow him to cause explosions as someone hits them. Not only has tight precision weak points, right, that only really an HF blade in comparison could cut through, or something of the same velocity and speed, as well because of being able to even match Raiden's speed. Let's talk about speed for a second. This man would easily, just from being, on the same scuff and scale to all the people that I've mentioned, and to Raiden there in their fights, he would be able to give somewhat of a strength base, on this man Raiden for a second to make him lower himself, right, and use his more superior strength on him. Not only holds that he is in much really, physical regard to this man Raiden, possibly than others, but as well with speed would easily get him from easily sub-relativistic to multiple times in a relativistic to possibly pushing the speed of light if you think he can in truth react to his, blade mode, which is canon, and all the different speeds shown about that, which reasonably gets him ridiculously fast and what you could possibly comprehend for a general person in Metal Gear, as well again being anything of actual weight and strength, again being able to actually bench somewhat of Raiden's strength and capability and even possibly hurt him and showcase the ability to do the abilities that he can do to Raiden if you give him the chance, right? Reasonably should get him on easily the multiple times at low end town level skill, or you can get him to reasonably about the reasonable scuff level to say he is reasonably on a city plus multi-city, or because again he scales over characters that should scale to others that are able to destroy Metal Gears that literally were built to take nuclear bombs, which is just more consistent city level shit, but to the extent to where a nuclear war would rage out, and all the scaling that's presented on the screen would reasonably give SunDowner, like others that scale to him or above, mountain level possibly AP. With that being said, that makes SunDowner undoubtedly one crazed wild Vato in strength, speed, and AP. His knowledge and battle IQ, I guess, is something to greater talk about. He is the leader of Desperado 2, the case of the Winds of Destruction, was seen in high regard and hail by Senator Armstrong, who funds it. He is the CEO of World Marshal, right, and also, Senator of, obviously, Colorado. And so, someone like SunDowner enacted and all these things under the case of the approval of someone like Senator Armstrong to the best degree would show his tacticalness, his advantage in different fighting, and as well, he is one, even if you want to say very cocky and arrogant person, pretty skilled enough to utilize a lot of his mixtures of shit, and again, he's very physically strong. So, yeah, pretty much it for SunDowner. Time to go and talk about Goro, Prince of the Shokan. Goro, Prince of the Shokan, mightiest of them for a very long time. Son of a great king, mightiest arguable enforcer, and champion of Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung. For a long time, was uncontested and undefeated. Hailing from the Shokan, he has boundless strength. Undeniably feat of being one of the most heavily not only famed, but as well terrifying individuals with the tenacity of a dog. His race is half humanoid dragon-like people with 4 arms and 4 other stuff. We're not going to get into that. And as well, having fury and righteousness like never seen before. As well, with that being said, this man, being obviously for a very long time strongest of the Shokan, prince of them, was sent out to revel and rep in the means of Shao Kahn's not only plan of invasion of Earthrealm, but as well being chairman and hailing of that talk of, the food chain when it came down to the case of a warrior. As, like any other tournament of Mortal Kombat, it is 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments to win. They were faulted by one, in this case being by the great fame, Great Kung Lao, ancestor, great-great-grandfather of Kung Lao, and as well, to their credit, Kung Jin, others. He defeated him in Mortal Kombat. And through this, he was crowned the new champion after killing him and revel in the glory. And only later on, when he was defeated by Liu Kang, did he actually have the contest of being a man no longer being proud champion. But even then, he still showed, even after multiple defeats, of still being one built different Goliath. As being a person that mixed bag, gave somewhat of this man Liu Kang some type of challenge, as well was able to push past the freezing of this man Cyber Sub-Zero, and greatly showcase great prowess and form of very much dogma as being a guy that ain't nobody would dare contest and was still top dog for a very long time. I mean, he is the original stereotypical sub-boss, was being said. So the fact that he arguably makes perception gave someone like Kung Lao more of a fight than a guy like Kotaro, who was said to be more physically stronger than him, which obviously being more physically stronger does not define skill and makes argument of actual AP, is a great showcasing of a feat. Goro is one strong, tenacious, powerful, impregnable boss, behemoth, glorified slugger. I'm telling you, this man is the dragon, ruling Outworld for a great deal with his father with an iron fist like never seen before. And so Goro had a little bit of a line to Melina, mixed kind of sexual mixed interaction with her, where if he would go about being her form of, enforcer again, like he was to her father, and pretty much laying, the smackdown onto all threats to her rule as empress, and as well going about the means of, being possibly her king in the end, he would gain that power. This is where he would go about beefing with Khotun Khan's people, aka a form of like Aztec form king people within Outworld, and raging against his father, who was a form of king in his own right. As Mortal Kombat 11 confirms that this man Khotun Khan was a general before becoming Khan, as Khan is a form of title, right, within the Mortal Kombat universe, which is a mixed thing that I don't like. But Kotal, right, again, would be a man out here moving on the means of trying to go ahead and claim his rightful territory, and the means of being, a still very valiant general and, warlord in his own right, as well seeking to have the throne of Khan, as he feels like rightfully he should be sitting on the throne of emperor and ruler of all of Outworld. This would then come into greater climatic blows where yada yada, this man Goro would kill this man Kotal's father. They would have a fight. He would face this man Kotal in multiple forms, show physically, greater superiority to Kotal, be able to bang out with him, even with all his magic, all his summoning, all his art. He could not best him. And only when amped by the blood magic of a new form Kamidogu of second timeline. This is an obvious, we're talking about second timeline Goro, and as well mentioning the Mortal Kombat X comics, which, like I talked about in my Katana video, talked about my tier list video, shameless plug, blah blah blah, has reasonable canonicity to Mortal Kombat, like a mixed timeline talk about any other game. There's a mixed argument for the congruentness and the consistency of it, but reasonably so. There's nothing that actually disproves it of being canon. So with that being said, like I said, in the war to gain territory and for Mileena, again, to follow in the footsteps as, her father, and for all of them, being for a great deal of blood, he would scale to him. Without that, I still think, obviously, like in my tier list, that Khotun Khan is over him because of how much greater feats and accolades he's holding, and the fact that he's a lot more consistent, I would argue, than Goro. But Goro easily being able to stand and being said to be in physical strength and all these other parameters more mighty than a lot of people would conclude, to me, reasonably so, that Goro was out of doubt a man stronger than most different applicable people, and this would give him reasonable argument, I would say, to sufficely say, put him on the lowest end multi-city level, or you could stretch because of how much applicableness you really say kind of congruently allows a person to be on a higher stamp to say that Goro could be pushing on planetary gains. Granted, like with Mortal Kombat, and the second time I'm not having cheek scaling, it's very mixed, but you could say because of how mighty he was, because of how much of a threat he was to Kotal, how much he was bullying him, the fact that he has multiple times been said to be one, if not the most physically strongest dude of Outworld, that he is ridiculously beyond most niggas' comprehension. And most niggas that you think reasonably so are down and not of real relevance, he is over. And depending on what those people that he is said to be stronger than do, easily puts him in that level. So again, I think consistently you could say he's on a planetary scup, right? And, it's pretty consistent, to say the least, on that. Now, when it comes down to speed, though, he reasonably should be scaling at low end, massively hypersonic, to reasonably sub to good deal mid-relativistic to even higher pushing, greater deal speed of light. As not only does he scale to Khotun Khan, who utilizes the sun, he scales to multiple people who are said to be having light. He scales to people that should be able to, react and scale to some essence of light. And with that being said, he has fire, he has different claw bracers, very formidable fighter, knows multiple different mix-up of martial arts, all different forms of kung fu, boxing, wrestling, is very physically strong, is a very creative combatant, has his own green energy manipulation that he can use. I don't know where that hails from. He's a very tremendous fighter. So, in conclusion, I think just looking at it the way it is an obvious Goro, regardless at face value, if you think it's not as consistent. If we look at it from both consistent levels and how it is, they reasonably should be on the same scuff mixed bag of speed, but I would argue that Goro has a lot more inclination to be a lot more faster because he not only faces a guy who utilizes the actual fucking sun of some form, and because it hails from Outworld where he's using it, there's a level of like kind of mixed kind of stretch argument, but I could see it being considerable that because he faces a guy that uses the sun of a world that is not only bigger by all accounts, but Sun is entirely a lot more vast, most likely in speed proportion because of that. Because I don't even know I need to explain this, but in case possibly y'all don't understand this, suffice to say that in this case, this is mainly from a cosmology difference in speed, as from this perspective, obviously Outworld is a realm, is a universe, but the planet, like other form of realms and their planets, their body of planetary scale, have differences about them that would extend them in doing different stuff, right? So I would say that depending on how you perceive, because Outworld is bigger than Earth, the Sun would also have to be somewhat possibly bigger or have different extent. So with that being said, the Sun and how Kotal Khan used it would extend Goro's arguable speed difference and as well in fighting combatant. So I say that Goro reasonably has higher speed and as well more consistent on his end to an arguable extent than even mixed bag SunDowner stretch between obviously constituting multi-city to mountain level. He would just be beyond SunDowner's comprehension and he would just bully the shit out of him. Even if you think that he's somewhat on the same speed, I just think Goro is just too tough, too strong. And even with the HF blades, and I know that they, bypass durability, I just feel like there's a lot more leeway on Goro for the people he's faced and how much of a formidable dude he is. That would be very hard to pull what Kotal Khan does to him, which is where he's ripping off his fucking limbs and cutting off his, limbs to the point where making him pretty much useless. Now, if you equal the stats, that is where I think it's a lot more competitive. I think mixed because of Goro's already very mixed, arrogant, brutish, but still very much formidable stand, that he can not only pack up a great deal of what SunDowner's going to do from the twin blade 1D machete HF blades, but if he utilizes more of his defense and his shields and complements on both different tactical dynamicism, I can see him getting the win, especially because the HF blades bypass durability. So even if you think from a scaling chain perspective that Goro is more durable, there's a lot of arguments to say that SunDowner would cut him down. In the end, though, I see all around someone like Goro winning the fight most of the time, obviously, with that being said, but I can see an argument for SunDowner to give some mixed principle of reasonably, by all different constitutement, being able to get the dub. I see Goro with equal stats, by the way, because obviously if it wasn't, he would just most likely speed blitz and easily fucking one shot. He would literally gush this nigga SunDowner. But with equal stats, I see Goro getting the dub. Very high diff to extreme diff will take much a great deal of him, and we have to utilize every form of thing to even best him, and his defense would be very hard to best. But I could see Goro getting the job done again just because of the better scaling chain. Again, that's just me though. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. I'm hoping that you guys learned something. Let me know what more matchups you want to go and see. I can't wait to go and talk about more because it's not going to be the last time I talk about SunDowner. Have an interesting person that I feel like will be interesting to talk about again. I love y'all. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace out, my army. Love y'all.